the sport.
You could see something amazing, and I think that's what it's about. It's not what you're thinking. It's the sport buffet. I want to try out. And you wouldn't let someone.
It's that time again.
Time for the sport buffet.
We open up the buffet. Here's Mr. West.
Wake up, Mr. West! Mr. West! Mr. West! Mr. West!
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, welcome into another edition of the Sport Buffet. I am your host, Aaron Crouch, filling in for Matt West, who is away tending to some family matters up in Colorado. We wish him well, and we hope everything goes smoothly. Like I said, this is the Sport Buffet. We are brought to you live on the Sport Buffet Radio Network, broadcasting on Aristocrat Sportsnet. If you can catch the live stream on aristocratsportsnet.com, or you can check us out at www.thesportbuffet.com. Well, since I don't have Matt here filling in for him, I've got a panel, a cast of characters, if you will, and I'm going to go ahead and not waste any time and introduce them to the listeners. And a couple of guys I'm happy to have involved with our newest venture, Rank Sports, our NFL lead writer, Michael Deacon. Mike, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, Aaron. How are you?
Doing good. I'm doing good. We're definitely happy to have you aboard on Rank Sports, and we're interested in looking forward to the NFL articles that you'll be putting out here in the near future.
Well, thank you, and I'm very excited to be a part of Rank Sports. Journalism's always been a dream of mine, and the opportunity to pursue it excites me.
Yes, most definitely. And we also have our UFC lead Ron Stevens, who also will be contributing on baseball for the upcoming season as well. Sean, how's it going this evening?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Talk about this latest article, and as we'll dive into some content here. If you want to be a part of the show, give us a call at 702-475-9WIN. That is 702-475-9WIN. Let's talk about the article that you posted on Rank Sports. Dragic is potentially Goran Dragic is out of Phoenix, and I have to actually backtrack. I gave out the wrong number. Let's backtrack. 702-475-5946. 702-475-5WIN. Let's dive back in. Dragic wants out of Phoenix, and he said that he doesn't trust the management in Phoenix. What are the early rumblings? And over the last 24 hours, what have you really been hearing?
What I'm hearing is that he's not happy at all, and that a trade will most likely happen since he's a free agent, and he does not want to resign. So Phoenix's best option is to trade him. And the three places that he wants to go the most are the Lakers, the Knicks, and the Heat. The Lakers pretty much have it for him, but they do want to resign. They want to sign him when it comes to free agent time. The Heat would be a really, really good place for him because the Heat needs someone to run the ball for him. And I really don't see the Knicks going after him because since Carmelo's announced he's out for the rest of the year, it's almost useless. So I think it's down to the Heat, maybe the Celtics, and maybe the Kings. The Kings really want him. But we'll see what the Suns want to keep him.
Yeah, and they're pursuing packages that could be, 2 or 3 first-round picks and a decent young player. And I'm not sure 100% if some of these teams on his list are willing to give up that package for a guy like Goran Dragic. But you say a team like the Celtics. I mean, is he willing to re-sign with guys like the Celtics, the Kings, the Magic? I'm sorry, not the Magic, the Heat. Is he willing to be re-signed by those teams, or are they just kind of giving up the farm for a rental player?
If you're going to trade for him this late as a year, then you want to have to find out if he's going to resign. There's no point of signing someone like Dragic if they're not going to resign, especially if in the Celtics case. The Heat case, they maybe can make a run for it, but I don't see them making very far in the playoffs if they do. But like the Celtics or the Kings, you're going to have to talk to his agent and see if he wants to resign. That's the only way that they'll have to go get him.
All right, and Deacon, let me ask you this, and if you've been following this story at all, is Dragic, when it's time to resign, is he a max contract guy? Is he worth $100 million in your eyes?
Well, no, simply. I think that he is a top-notch offensive player. I think that he can score with the best point guards in the league. But if you look at what wins NBA titles, Mario Chalmers, Tony Parker, not traditionally guys who are score-first point guards.
Sure.
So, there's a business side to all these decisions, and do you get that kind of return on a player like that? Maybe. But, you look at a franchise like the Lakers where he said he wants to go. Okay, he wants to go there. They'd obviously like to have him and pay him max money, but they won't trade Jordan Clarkson. They won't. I don't put it past Kupchak to deal 3 first-round picks. Especially if you can't sit this out all the way, but the Lakers' first-round pick this year isn't protected unless they get in the top 5. And if they're anywhere outside of the top 5, Phoenix gets their first-round pick. So when you're in their position and you have nobody on your roster and Julius Randle coming back next year from a broken leg with no NBA experience, aging Kobe Bryant, Jim Buss fighting for his job as owner before his sister kind of said, you got this off season and that's it. So, I don't put it past them to do something drastic. I think Dragic wants to go to a bigger market.
I mean, you look at the Suns, and we're talking about how the Suns may be in turmoil or disarray because of a guy like Goran Dragic. I mean, let's not forget Eric Bledsoe is pretty much the main guy in there. So Dragic is playing second fiddle. He's obviously an all-star caliber player, but, they already agreed to give, I believe it was 80 to 85 million to Eric Bledsoe. So I really think that obviously re-signing Dragic was not going to be in their plans to begin with. And maybe that's what Dragic started to see the writing on the wall. But, I mean, we're talking 3 p.m. on Thursday. I mean, you're talking Knicks and Lakers who don't really have draft picks available. The Celtics come to mind. They've been stockpiling draft picks for 2-3 years now. Danny Ainge just kind of been, the Bill Belichick of basketball, for lack of a better analogy. Do you see him potentially unloading a few picks if he can convince Dragic to stay in Boston and be a part of that rebuilding project? I mean, Boston lost Rondo. Sean, I mean, can Dragic fill his shoes?
He would be a big help, but the thing about Dragic is he will be the biggest name traded at this deadline. But I don't see him. He's not a elite point guard. That's what you're asking.
Okay, I can see that. And there's a couple other names. And if you visit ranksports.com and check out our NBA section, you'll see an article posted in there by our lead writer Gary Riddle about a few of the names that could be dealt here in the next 24 to 48 hours. But do you see, Sean? I'll ask you the same question I asked Deacon. Do you see a team giving him $100 million this offseason?
No, I don't see it unless there's a high demand for it. And he's really good, but I don't. Maybe 475, 480, but not 100. There's no way.
Okay. Well, let's look at Dragic in this sense. I'll take it my opinion, and I'll let you guys kind of tear it to shreds. I think, to be honest with you, from an NBA standpoint, for a team that's, for a guy that's commanding $100 million, for him to come out against an organization that he's played for that's basically given him everything that he's deserved right now, does he lose a little bit of credibility to guys like Mitch Kupchak and some of the other general managers in the league. That, you know, basically he's saying this guy can turn on us at any point. Sean, I'll direct it to you first.
No, not really. It's a business. He's not happy in the NBA. The players basically run it, and it's been known to that. Players are known to fire coaches just because they don't like them. But I don't see him. He's a good point guard. They're running a 3-point guard system, and it's really tight. And if he don't go, then it's gonna be Isaiah Thomas who goes. But Isaiah Thomas is cheaper and is putting up good numbers, so I can easily see why they would keep him. But yeah, I mean, it's a business. That's what happens in businesses.
Well, let's look at this. We got an email. We got an email from Shane in Florida, and he says that Dragic doesn't make sense in Boston because they have guys like Avery Bradley and Marcus Smart going forward. And I believe he also mentioned Evan Turner as kind of that shooting guard, small forward, point forward kind of type. So he really doesn't see Dragic fitting in. I'm a Boston Celtics fan, and I know they've fallen on hard times, and I'd sure like to see some talent, you know, be infused into that lineup. But I understand that they're going through a rebuilding process, and I'm letting Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens run the course. I mean, we talk about Boston as a potential destination. I mean, have we just kind of squashed that in the sense of the young players that Boston has going forward, Deacon?
Well, I wanted to mention Marcus Smart when you guys were talking about it. I forgot about Avery Bradley, to be honest. But, you know, they did just use the first-round pick on Marcus Smart last year, who I personally was very high on coming out of Oklahoma State as a score first point guard. But, you know, I think that Boston is unattractive to Dragic for the same reason that Phoenix is, as Sean said. They're running the 3-point guard system. He's splitting time with Eric Bledsoe and Isaiah Thomas. I don't know that he gets along with Eric Bledsoe. I believe, don't quote me on that. I read that there was some animosity in that backcourt somewhere between him and one of them.
I think that's a good assessment, I would say, based on Dragic's comments the last 48 hours.
Yeah, so, you know, he's almost in a situation where he's untradeable because nobody's going to give him the money he wants unless he ends up, you know, remember what Kobe Bryant did to start his title without a Shaq run. He ran Shaq out of town, he ran Phil out of town, and he stayed. And they were awful for a while.
Yeah,
but
you're right. And they were struggling to make the playoffs. They were the 8th seed.
That type of attitude is still in Los Angeles. So do I think that's the turn off the Kupchak? Absolutely not.
Okay, well, I mean, let's say he doesn't get dealt here in the next 48 hours, and he hits the open market, which clearly, I mean, obviously Phoenix isn't bringing him back. So he hits the open market. I mean, are we still looking at the same potential suitors, or are we potentially looking at guys who are going to lowball Dragic and say, look, you know, we'll give you 4 years, $30 million, or 5 years, $40 million, but you're not getting $30 million a year like you think you're getting. Sean, what do you think about that?
I agree. I wouldn't completely say they lowball him, but I think he'd be in middle range. Look at not Hayward, the guy from the Jazz.
Yeah, Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, look at him. No one thought he'd get a nice contract, but he got a nice contract because there was such a demand for him. Could it happen? Yes. I think it happen. No. The only team that can give him the max contract would be Phoenix because they've owned his rights for so long. But I still think around 480, 470. I think it'd be around the mid mark of the NBA.
All right. Well, let me ask you, Deacon, and this might be a little bit out of left field, but could you see a guy like Goran Dragic after an off season where he doesn't really get what he feels he's worth? Could you see a guy like Dragic end up in Oklahoma City, almost filling the role that was vacated by James Harden?
No, I think if Dragic hits the open market as a free agent without being dealt, he gets a max contract because the Knicks will give him one and the Lakers will give him one. And Max, Sean, the Phoenix can give him an extra year at the same amount because they own his bird rights. If he gets traded, his bird rights go with him, so any team he would potentially get traded to could sign him for the 5th year. But if he hits the open market, then 4 years and $80 million is going to be about the max number. Now, teams won't be as scared to sign him to that because the new money kicks in from the TV deal and the salary cap's expected to go through the roof the next couple of years. So it won't hurt in the future as much as this mistake that I see being made would have hurt in the past.
Okay, I can understand that. So, final thought on Dragic. Where do you guys think that he ends up, whether it be in the next 48 hours or come the 2015-16 season? Sean, where do you think that Dragic, if you had one guess, where do you think he ends up?
One guess makes sense to most to me would be Miami.
And Deke, where do you think Dragic will be putting on a uniform here in the next few days, or potentially next year?
I think he stays in Phoenix for the year, and he signs a max contract with the New York Knicks in the offseason.
I like that. I can see that happening. I mean, pour salt on the wounds of the Knicks, I'll tell you that. But
and they've done a good job of Phil in this horrible season has done a wonderful job of ridding them of the bad contracts that they had. Raymond Felton is gone, J.R. Smith is gone, Bargnani's is gone, Amari is now gone. So they are far better off than they were 6 months ago.
Okay. And Shane sent us another email, and he's talking about a nice wild card. I'll throw you guys a little bit of a curveball. And that guy is Tobias Harris for the Orlando Magic. His contract's expiring soon, and he wants kind of a little piece of that Hayward money that you were talking about. And we know the Magic are in rebuild mode, and that's not something that they're looking to do right now. So where could we potentially see him end up as a nice small forward, power forward for one of these playoff contenders?
I think he could end up in Oklahoma City. What about you, Sean?
I'm sorry, are we talking about again?
We're talking about Tobias Harris, Magic small forward, point forward. There's potential that he could be on the open market here in the next couple days as well.
Yeah, somewhere like Oklahoma City would be really good for him. Maybe I'm sure it's out of the question, but Atlanta could use someone who could rebound. But Oklahoma City seems to be a better bet.
Yeah, I mean, I think Oklahoma City could be a good spot. I mean, they're not too far out of the 8th spot in the East, or excuse me, in the West. And I think that he can be an upgrade, especially if they have to get rid of Reggie Jackson. They could kind of replace points with points. I mean, Tobias doesn't play a lot of defense per se from watching him in Orlando, but he definitely can give you 25, to 28 on any given night, and he's shown that in the last 2 years. And I think that's why he's asking for the money that the Magic aren't going to give him. So we'll see what happens. He might be a wild card in the next couple of days, but it could be fun. The next 48 hours in the NBA will be fun. We'll kind of see if it has the excitement of the deadline deals, or if it's just going to kind of ho-hum come and pass. So we'll see what happens. But let's talk about a game that's going on right now, and I'm watching it here on TV, and it looks it's getting started here. It's Duke UNC, and obviously one of the great rivalries in college basketball. Sean, I know you're a Duke fan and grew up watching Duke basketball, but I mean, the question that we've had the last 5 years, every year it seems, is this the same Duke UNC rivalry to the fans as it has been in years past, or is it just kind of lost a step?
I think it's still good. It's always been good. It maybe lost a half a step because of the teams that they had in the time and because of the players leaving after the first year of college. But it's still good. It's the biggest selling college basketball game still today. And still one of the biggest selling college or even pro events to even get tickets to. So it's still up there. Still arguably the best rival that there is in sports.
Now let me ask you this, Deacon. Has it lost a step in your eyes because maybe UNC hasn't been the North Carolina that they were in the 90s, early 2000s, and even up into about 2009? Has North Carolina really not held up their end of the bargain? I mean, we know what we've gotten from Duke the last few years, pre-tournament time, but I feel like they've been one of the top dominant teams still, even of the last 5 years. I feel like North Carolina has not really held their own in this rivalry. What say you?
You know, I agree with that point. Duke has Krzyzewski, and I get nailed over this from time to time, but I'm one of those people who the difference in Carolina and Duke is Carolina is a program and Duke's a coach. All of Duke's success is tied to Mike Krzyzewski, every bit of it. At Duke, you've won championships with more than one guy. We've been there for I'm not even a Tar Heel fan. They've been there for a long time. You know, Krzyzewski is arguably the greatest college basketball coach outside of John Wooden in the history of the game. So let's see what happens to them as he leaves as far as the program and where it can stay. You know, things like this happen in rivalries. I'm a Michigan fan. I'll relate it to Michigan, Ohio State in football. You know, I think that no matter what, those two games, Michigan, Ohio State, Duke, UNC, they're bigger than a game. And when you go to one of those schools, whether you're there for a year or you're there for 5, you know how big that game is. People make sure you know what that game means. So I don't think that it's necessarily lost a step. I just think that we have an information overload nowadays. Duke UNC was the only show in town for so long. Now it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying. It's not anything to do with the outside effects. I mean, the one and dones? Obviously, North Carolina's not getting those top echelon players, but they're getting some guys that can transition to the NBA. But it just kind of takes a few. It kind of takes a few years for those guys to get going, and eventually they leave without really developing. And UNC is kind of right back into the bottom. Again, they have to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to rebuild, whereas Duke has just kind of adapted into that reload phase. So, I mean, Duke's already out to an early 20-12 lead, so you can kind of see that there's a little bit of force already flexing their muscles. And I know UNC fans probably appreciated Duke's tribute to Dean Smith. Obviously, a legend. You talk about guys like Krzyzewski and Wooden, but Dean Smith was definitely a pioneer of this game. Him and Tarkanian have passed very recently. But it was touching to see that even in the face of a rivalry, Duke still shows the class and respect to one of the game's all-time greats, even though he's on the other side of the rivalry. So I think that as a Duke fan, Sean, what do you think about the way that they handled the tribute?
It's respect. You respect the other team. You respect your opponent, and you respect what the rivalry is. I would be upset if they didn't show anything about Dean Smith. Now I respect them to, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah, it was definitely an element of class, and Mike and Duke have been nothing but that. The game, obviously, the meetings in the regular season are almost irrelevant, but they're still fun to watch. But let me ask you a question, and I received an email from John over in Memphis, and he said he's watching the game, and he posed this question. He said if you put the all-time UNC and the all-time Duke teams together, who would win? And he gave me his list of the all-time Duke and UNC teams, and I'll read them to you here, and I'll let you guys kind of brainstorm and tell me who you think would win. And Duke, he has the starting five. He has Christian Laettner, Elton Brand, Grant Hill, Jay Williams, and J.J. Redick for the starting five of Duke. And then for North Carolina, he has Bob McAdoo, James Worthy, Vince Carter, Ty Lawson, and obviously Michael Jordan. So if you put those 5 guys, those 10 guys on the court, just for fun, and Michael, who do you think would win that matchup?
I'm going to go with Carolina. As much as I respect that Duke lineup, and I have a lot of respect for it, I might have put Wojciechowski in over Jay Williams. But Jordan and Worthy played together, first of all, in college. And, he's kind of a trump card to this because he was great in college. Great in college. I mean, he wasn't the number 3 pick in the NBA draft for no reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is I'll get to Sean's take in a second, but we are on the Sport Buffet live on the Sport Buffet Network, broadcasting on Aristocrat Sports. If you want to be a part of the show, give us a call. Our number is, let me make sure I get it right this time, 702-475-5946. That's 702-475-5WIN. So, Sean, I will, after I've given you a moment to kind of think it through and take your homer bias out of it, who do you think would win in that all-time matchup?
With those two lineups, it would have to be Carolina, because that has more power and more strength to that lineup, up and down the whole lineup than the lineup that the Duke has.
Now, would you, as a Duke fan, replace anybody that you've seen over the years? Would you replace Laettner, Brand, Hill, Williams, or Redick with anybody else who stepped through, like a Battier or guys like that, or a William Avery?
I would have to go with Battier, because Battier was the heart of that team that he played on. He was the heart, and he was strong, and he did everything that team needed him to do. So I would definitely have to put Battier in.
All right. Well, yeah, it's a little fun debate. I thought that was an interesting email, and we appreciate you sending us emails. Give us an email if you want to be a part of the show as well, and you're a little afraid to talk on the phone. Shoot us an email at sportbuffet@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to read it on the air and discuss. But Duke UNC, the rivalry, it is what it is. It's a fun rivalry. It's intense, and when they're both good, it's good for the game. And even when they're not both, top echelon programs, it's still, something that a lot of people gather around who are just casual basketball fans to watch a good game. But let's keep that theme in college basketball and talk about the best team in college basketball right now, and that's the University of Kentucky Wildcats. And I know that's Sean, you live in Kentucky, and that's right in your backyard. So well, I guess the number one question that on everybody's mind that everybody keeps asking, sports talk radios, talking heads, water cooler talk, is are they going to go 40-0? Are they going to run the table? Can anybody beat them?
They have a great chance of going the whole way. The only team that can beat them in the regular season is my Georgia Bulldogs. I don't think they will, but they have the best chance, especially with the way Georgia's been playing the last 2 games. They lost to South Carolina and Auburn, which are absolutely terrible losses. But they are talented, they are long, and they can run the floor. I think the only 2 teams that can actually give them fits are in the ACC, and that's Virginia and Duke.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The guys who are able to become stopgaps for Kentucky don't exist in their conference, and everybody, we could pencil in Florida for many years as a formidable opponent, but they're just not that this year. And like you said, teams like Auburn, Arkansas, Alabama, they're just not up to the level of competition that the University of Kentucky has. And like you said, I think that Virginia is a quality opponent, but I mean, they're probably not going to see them till minimum Final Four, Elite Eight if the seedings get really weird. But, I think there's no reason why they're not cruising to at least like the Final Four, the Elite Eight, before they even meet an opponent that could even give them a chance to be defeated. Deacon, do you see anybody who am I missing anybody in their division and their conference and potentially who they could be paired up with in the first couple rounds of the tournament? Am I missing anybody that could be formidable to Kentucky?
I think once, first of all, I believe that they'll finish the regular season undefeated. I think once you get into the SEC tournament, if they run into a LSU or a Florida or one of those schools that gave them a little bit of trouble the first time around, I think you have a potential loss in that. I also think that the NCAA tournament is a different monster. You got to win 6 straight. Your first 2 are in such a quick time span, and same with games 3 and 4. And then if you go on to win, you have the one semifinal on Saturday and the national championship on Monday, and everything just kind of slows down. It's just laid out weird. It makes it, it's not even like the regular season. That's why I think a college basketball national champion is never argued. But when you get into the dance, I think if they run into one of these small schools who don't have anything to lose and we can shoot a lot of threes and they just start chucking them, what if they run into Wichita State that shoots 43s and hits 65% of them? I mean, the three-point field goal in college basketball, more so than even the NBA, is the ultimate equalizer. So,
yeah, but hasn't a team like Kentucky kind of been the team that's – I mean, I'm looking just at the tournament last year. They've kind of been the team that utilized that 3 as their equalizer, and they've only gotten better from last March. I mean, we talk about Harrison and how many threes he hit in the tournament. It was amazing.
Well, yeah, okay, so they're going to be the number 1 overall seed, and they roll whoever they play in the first round, and then they come out 48 hours later against a –
So you don't see a 16 seed that's in the field that could potentially give Kentucky trouble?
No. No, but when that 8 game, in the round of 32, or, you catch, like you said, what if the seedings get crazy? What if you get a loaded bracket? You catch a Sweet 16 game. It's what happened to Duke last year. Mercer went nuts from beyond the arc. Nuts. Mercer loses that game 99 out of 100 times. They hit 50% of their threes.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that the senior-laden leadership on that team had a lot to do with it. But you're right. You gotta hit buckets, and that's exactly what Mercer did.
And if you run into one of those teams, a bad half. College basketball, bad 10 minutes. If you have a bad 10 minutes at the wrong time, a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's on to the next season, for sure. Well, let me ask you then. Okay, so UK, you think UK has potential to finally face some competition in the SEC tournament? I mean, I know that they faced Florida, they faced LSU, they had some close calls. They potentially could have gone down, but I mean, do you think that Calipari can adapt as a coach and learn from what happened in 2 games on the road, especially when they have rematches coming and the NCAA tournament, the conference tournament? Don't you think that a guy like Calipari, who could go down as one of the best, is going to be equipped at adapting and retooling his team to not only beat these guys again, but not let them be in the game and put their foot on the throat of Florida and LSU and guys like that? Sean, what do you think?
I mean, that's why he's one of the best, especially he has one of the youngest teams in the NCAA. But, that's what he's paid to do. He's paid to get these kids ready to play. But with the close losses, I think it's going to be like that for the tournament. They're a good team. They're not even close to the perfect team. They're probably the best team right now, and maybe the best team going into the tournament. But as you and Deacon have talked about, all it is one lucky team and one lucky game, a great game, a great role, and it ends it off for you. But there are going to be a number one seed, and there will probably be the whole number one seed in NCAA. So I don't see where their bracket will be loaded by any means. So they should have an easy way to Elite Eight.
Deacon, your thoughts?
On my thoughts again.
I interrupted you. I know you were going to say something to answer the question about Calipari and his adjustments going into the second and third games against the same team.
Yeah, I do. I believe that Calipari is that type of coach. However, in the case of Florida, Billy Donovan is, in my opinion, the best coach in that conference and has been for a while. He is, I think overlooked a little bit in the great coaches debate because, I don't know.
Do you think he's overlooked because he's not at one of the traditional basketball powerhouses?
Yeah, that probably has something to do with it. But
Florida's
who else has won back-to-back?
I don't disagree with you. You don't think that national basketball powerhouses. You think Kentucky, you think Duke, you think North Carolina, you think Syracuse, you think Michigan State, you think UCLA. I don't think Florida. I mean, we're talking about that's 7 teams ahead of them. I mean, I understand what Billy Donovan's done, but I mean that's a pretty big declaration that you say that Billy's far as see. I mean, I agree that he's a phenomenal coach. He may go down as well. I don't know. I think Calipari. I think Calipari as a recruiter, and I think Calipari as a coach is potentially what gives him a nod, and his ability. We can talk about scandals aside, and that's a whole nother topic. But we could talk about his ability, to recruit, basically. What do you think about his recruiting in Calipari and giving him the edge?
I'm sorry, work up there. Was that directed to me?
Yeah, Deke, I'm talking to you about the.
Okay. Calipari's recruiting gives him an edge over anybody. Anybody and everybody. Now, he's been in trouble everywhere he's gone. I live 2 hours away from Lexington. We get wildcat overload out here. So for that fact, I kind of hope that he doesn't get caught, or I hope he doesn't cheat. I hope he doesn't get caught. But it's almost like I let you talk me out of my point as you were making yours. So I believe Donovan's a great coach, and maybe that has to do a little bit with the fact that I got to watch him growing up when he was at Marshall before he took the Florida job. I got to see kind of what he built and left here, even though they didn't do anything with it. But he took over at Florida. He built that program. He won. I think he has 3 national titles there. He won the back-to-backs, and did he win one more?
Yes, he did win one more. I think he won one more. I'll have to get the crack research staff to check on that, but I do believe he has 3 titles at Florida.
Gut feeling is he has 3 titles. Krzyzewski has 4. You don't. We'll see what Florida is in a couple of years, if they're getting better, or if they're still where they are. They were the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament last year. to my
I am
success.
wrong. He's only got two titles, the back-to-backers.
2 titles. Okay. So he has 2, but they were the number 1 overall seed last year, and who knows what going forward holds. And like I said about success at Duke, what does the school do when he leaves? Do they stay there, or do they sink back into so-called mediocrity?
That's a great question. I mean, that's to be seen for a lot of teams with guys like Boeheim, Izzo, Donovan, Calipari. I mean,
Well, not Calipari as much at Kentucky.
I mean, if Calipari were to leave for the NBA tomorrow, I don't think that they'd be the same team next year.
Yes, but Kentucky's still the program Kentucky because they're Kentucky. Calipari won there, Adolph Rupp won there, Rick Pitino won there, W. Smith won there. We have long histories of titles, multiple coaches, multiple decades, different times.
You don't think UCLA is falling off the map in this point in this day and age?
But I think if you're a high school kid who, knows a little bit about the history of college basketball, when UCLA's coach calls you listen. UCLA?
Sure, I can see that. I mean, and you don't think Florida has that? Now let me ask you this: do you think that? And I'll pose this up to both of you. Do you think that Florida's basketball is overshadowed not so much by the other basketball programs, but by their football program?
I believe Florida is overshadowed by their. I believe Florida's basketball program is overshadowed by their football program. Yes, that's a football school in a football state.
Yeah, I think that could be a potential. And Sean, I'll let you elaborate on. I think that could be a potential more so than the other basketball programs.
Well, here's a couple things with that. First of all, Florida is more of a football school. SEC is more of a football conference as well. Most of the money being made from that conference is made in football. Second of all is that Kentucky is the big name in the SEC, and there's a big drop behind it, especially this year and the last couple of years. So, yes, Florida has some work to do.
Like you said, Florida was the top overall seed last year. So there's not really that much of a drop-off. Florida's still competitive.
They're still competitive, but they're not competitive every year and every out like they are Kentucky. Even if Kentucky doesn't have Calipari, they are Kentucky and they are competitive.
I mean, Kentucky was in the NIT 3 years ago. They were the NIT and they lost.
Are we giving them a pass for
this year?
Let's bring in a fresh voice on this, and we'll ask the CEO of Aristocrat Sportsnet, John Sirocco. What are your thoughts on the Florida basketball program? Overshadowed more so by other basketball programs, or more shadowed by their own football program? John, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Aaron. It's very nice to be here as always, and good evening to the rest of you gentlemen on the show.
Good evening.
My take on the University of Florida basketball program, I don't know really what was said because I wasn't able to really listen to the most of the conversation. But I think here in Florida, as opposed to a national outlook, nationally I think they're overlooked by other teams in the SEC and maybe other conferences. But here in Florida, people know and respect what Billy Donovan's done there in Gainesville. And I don't think he's overshadowed by the football program. I think they are two separate entities who have been equally successful over the past 10 or 15 years. So locally, at least in the state, they're definitely not overshadowed. But nationally, I think people seem to overlook their basketball program.
I think that's a good adage to it. I think they're well represented and well respected in the state. And John, you and I both know that based on living there. You currently, me formerly. But I think Billy is one of the best coaches, and it's unfortunate to see them fall on hard times for many basketball fans. I mean, myself being a Florida State guy, I'm always happy when they suck, but I won't throw salt on their wounds. Well, let's wrap up. Final comment here on just quick one word, and I'll ask each of you individually. I'll start with you, Deke. And then we'll go to Sean, and then back to John. Yes or no? Will you University of Kentucky go 40-0 and win it all?
No.
Sean?
I would say yes.
And I will say no as well.
All right, there you have it. We have our panel of experts here on the Sport Buffet. We have our newest ranked sports writers, Michael Deacon, the NFL lead writer, Sean Stevens, the MMA UFC lead writer, and our boxing lead writer, John Sirocco, who's also the CEO of Aristocrats Sportsnet. You can check out his show, The Aristocrats, on www.aristocratsportsnet.com. In fact, it's exactly where we're broadcasting right now. Gentlemen, let's switch gears, and we'll stay in college, but we'll move to a different ball. And my guy, I'm a little bit of a homer on this, but it's getting harder and harder to defend him and harder to make excuses. But Jameis is unsure. Jameis Winston's unsure if he's going to throw at the combine. John, is that a good move for Jameis to not throw at the combine, or potentially, only kind of throw maybe half the balls that Mariota's going to throw?
Yes, I think if I was advising Jameis on the situation, I would probably advise him to not throw. We see this a lot with top quarterbacks in the draft or quarterbacks that seem to be the number one overall pick in most people's eyes. So he has only something to lose if he goes out there and throws, whereas Mariota obviously has something to gain, and that's a higher draft pick. So I understand the logic, and I think if I was representing Jameis, I would tell him not to throw as well. Just kind of go out there and throw at his pro day and let him do his thing there.
Now, Michael, I'll direct this to you, Deke. And is Winston more afraid that if he does throw, we could have a Teddy Bridgewater kind of day, or is he just more afraid of an injury?
I think that Jameis wasn't going to throw, and then Mariota came out, and he felt like he had to throw if Mariota threw. I agree with John. If I was advising Jameis, I would tell him to not throw at the combine. And that just has to do with people say that Jameis is NFL ready because of the system he played in and what the demands on him were. And Mariota's system is, in fact, designed to level the playing field. It's supposed to take lesser talent and allow them to play with the most talented teams. And so, Mariota, I think throwing can help him, and I just hope that Jameis doesn't get suckered into a bad decision, because he shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the Jameis was never intending on throwing, and you're right. And I think that he still is better off not throwing when it comes down to it. But Sean, like we said, Mariota has confirmed that he's gonna throw. Let's move over to him just for a quick second. We'll touch back on Jameis. Where do you, if you had to foreshadow or predict the future a little bit, where do you feel that he's going to do? What do you feel that he's going to do with his throwing combine? Do you feel that's going to hurt him or help him? Because do you think he'll be more exposed outside of Oregon's offense, or do you think that he's just the kind of guy that can hit all the throws and is going to wow the scouts?
I think it could go either way because of the system he's in. But he really has nothing to lose because no one knows exactly where he's going to go. Jameson is probably most likely the top pick, but Mariota could fall anywhere from number 2 all the way down to second round. This defense is this draft is very defense heavy. So I think it wouldn't. It's a big either way. It's 50-50 shot. It could really hurt him, and he could be number 2 pick to Tennessee, or it could really be really bad, and he could fall down to maybe the late first round, early second.
Yeah, and we talked about this on the Aristocrat Sportsnet last night, John, you and I. Like Sean just mentioned, he could go as high as 2. He could fall all the way down to the second round. If he doesn't go at 2, which, the Titans could potentially be content with Zach Mettenberger. could we see like that Aaron Rodgers type fall, that Johnny Manziel type fall all the way down to the 20s? Even let's even say a Teddy Bridgewater, Geno Smith type fall, who, they had kind of the bad pro days, and it just kind of hurt them. And Bridgewater seems to have recovered from it, but guys like Geno Smith haven't. So, I mean, could we see that kind of fall if he's not taking it too?
Did you direct that towards me, Aaron?
Yes, that's directed towards Johnny Sirocco.
I know I'm sleeping over here. Sorry about that, guys. Last night, as you mentioned, man, I think it's the first time in probably your history, and I know for sure in my history, that I had a two-hour conversation about the Browns and the Titans. Although it was fun because the people that were involved. But you're right, we did touch on Mariota. And I think if he does fall past number 2, I don't see him falling past like number 5 or 6, where I think the Jets pick 6. And I think if he's sitting there, I don't think the Jets are going to let him get past them. So no, I don't see a fall into the teens or the 20s for Mariota at all.
Okay.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to say this. I certainly haven't ruled out, and I might be in the minority here, but I would not rule out Tampa Bay taking Mariota at number 1 at this point either.
Okay, I can see something like that, and Deacon, we'll get back to you with this. Why? I mean, everybody was so down on Winston for character issues, and the fact that in the first half of games he just wasn't the same player as in the second half of games. But yet all of a sudden when it's draft time, I mean, Jameis Winston's the clear-cut number 1, and he's not going to fall any further. And, if he does, he's not going past 2. I mean, how all of a sudden is Jameis this, this can't-miss prospect who has no chance of not being a Buccaneer or a Titan? How all of a sudden has the media changed their opinion once he left Florida State?
Well, you look at it's a quarterback driven league, it's a passing driven league, and that's where the buck stops. And Tampa needs a quarterback, and I think that in Jameis's case, and I think this is very singular to Jameis Winston. You look at a guy who has some off the field stuff, and every NFL GM will tell you, I can fix that. And then some can, some can't, but they always think that they can. Ego's part of the job. But I think you look at the situation in Tampa. He's got a guy who can hand the ball off to him, Doug Martin. He's got a big, tall Mike Evans, young, really good receiver. And above everything, he's got a coach who is, and this is going to sound bad, but I think it matters, who is a black man, who is respected, and he can throw that blanket over Jameis and say, son, let me lead you. And I think that's why people think Jameis won't go. I haven't heard any talk of Jameis to the Titans. But
that's my point. I mean, we're not even sliding Jameis out of 1, and I'm of the opinion I think Jameis is headed for Tampa too. So that's it's kind of set in stone in my mind as well. I just find that it's such a strange argument that here you have the Heisman Trophy winner and the guy who basically he was a runner-up in the national championship game, and his team shredded Jameis Winston's team in the Rose Bowl. But here we're talking about questions of him. And we do it with every Oregon quarterback, Joey Harrington, Dennis Dixon, anybody that comes out of that. We all talk about the system. But, and I'll pose this to you, Sean. I mean, why isn't Mariota any different? Because when he was in college, all we talked about is how polished he was, how accurate he was, how smart he was. And all we talked about is with Jameis Winston is how much he lacked in character, how much, he was a little bit, between the ears, he wasn't all there. And, he didn't have always the greatest arm strength, the greatest arm accuracy. How is it flipped from NCAA to NFL? These two guys, one was so polished and one was so raw, they've literally just done a complete 180 with each other. I mean, how does that happen, Sean?
It's like you said, it's with the system. It's absolutely with the system. Oregon runs a completely different system. Florida State runs a pro system, so he's used to it. Mariota has a lot of learning to do. Can he do it? Yes. Will he be as protected as Winston? No. Will he have a Willie? No.
All right, John. Let's talk about this. Do you see? There's been talk about Chip Kelly trying to sell the farm with draft picks and Nick Foles to get up to that number 2 spot and take Mariota. I mean, do you see a scenario a la Ricky Williams, with Mike Ditka? Do you see that scenario playing out, or Robert Griffin III playing out in Chip Kelly now that he has the general manager decision power to go up and get Mariota? Do you see him going all the way up to 2 from, I think they're pick like 20 or 21?
I certainly wouldn't rule it out. That's for sure. And this is just based on Chip Kelly, because if you recall last year, there were heavy reports that he was, or 2013, I'm sorry, he desperately wanted to move up and grab Deion Jordan coming out of Oregon, who he coached at Oregon. It just so happened the Dolphins kind of sneaked ahead of him and traded with the Raiders to grab Deion. So right there tells me that he's not afraid to move up in the draft, especially high up in the draft, to grab a player that he wants.
Did he want Deion Jordan, or was it a ploy to dump him on the Dolphins? Because we've seen what Deion Jordan's become in the 2 years.
Well, it's not about that, because the Dolphins moved up from 11 or 12 to number 2 or 3 to grab Deion, because they had a sense that Philadelphia was going to grab him at 4. Or Philadelphia was trying to move up or something like that. There was reports out there. Who knows if it's a bunch of smoke screen or not. But further, I kind of want to touch on Philadelphia has been dangling Nick Foles' name out there for at least a year. He's been involved in trade discussions with Cleveland and another team I can't recall who I read. So that tells me that Nick Foles is not Chip Kelly's guy in his view going forward. So if Foles is not Chip Kelly's guy, and he really believes that Mariota's guy can be his guy, I think, Chip Kelly will be willing to give up the farm to go get him, especially if he doesn't see Foles as his quarterback of the future. You're just cutting a loss that you're not going to have anyway.
All right. I mean, it's definitely a possibility, and when draft day comes, we know that when the chips are on the table, anything can happen. But Deacon, is there any other quarterback in this draft class? And I'll give you a few. Brett Hundley, Bryce Petty, Sean Mannion out of Oregon State. Is there any in this draft class that a team like the Titans or a team like Tampa Bay could trade down picks and get a guy that they might want in one of those 3? Hundley, Bryce Petty, any of those guys, like kind of almost this year's Derek Carr.
I'm not real high on this year's quarterback class personally. Brett Hundley's one of those guys who his talent is endless, his ceiling is endless, but for this reason or that reason, he just can't tap into it. Jim Moore is a quarterback guy out there in UCLA, and Hundley just kind of regressed. I worry about guys coming out of Baylor. I remember when Griffin came out and he said, we don't have a playbook. Well, I played in an open, a pretty wide open offense in college. It was almost a carbon copy of what Rich Rod ran at WVU, and we had a playbook. I don't understand that, not having the playbook and going from that into what it requires to play in the NFL is crazy. So Sean Mannion has the size. I don't see, unless Mariota ends up in Philly, outside of Jameis, I don't see a starting quarterback out of this draft in 5 years.
Okay, I can see that. And Sean, we'll talk about a point that Deacon touched on, and he basically said that Lovie Smith is kind of the guy to put the blanket over Jameis Winston, and it came out today that Lovie was perfectly comfortable making him the face of the franchise. Is it too early to believe Lovie in this point, or is he just kind of ready? Are they just dead set tipping their hand that they're going to take Jameis?
It's too early to believe anyone at this point. The draft isn't anywhere close, and they're just trying to they might be could be even telling the truth, or it could be even just putting stuff in people's heads. But you can't believe anything anybody says in the sport business until it's written ink. So, do I think he'll be the first round pick? Yes. Can he be a future to franchise? Yes. Is what what he's saying? Maybe 75-25, but I won't believe it 100% until it's written in ink.
I can see that. I can see what you're saying with that. But, all right, well, let's ask the panel here, and I'll start with John. And I'll go John, Sean, and then Deacon. Who's your number one pick if the draft is today?
Yeah, okay. If I'm sitting in Jason Light's shoes, I guess, in his seat today, just my personal preference, I'm going Marcus Mariota number 1.
I think I would go Leonard Williams, USC. See what I would pick.
So if you're the Bucks, you're going to take Leonard Williams and skip out and basically give Mike Glennon another shot?
I honestly think that Leonard Williams would honestly be better 5 years than Winston.
I mean, it's a lot safer of a pick.
Long time.
But, I mean, we've seen Mario Williams, guys like that. I mean, Mario's not even in Houston at this point. And just Jadeveon Clowney, the book's still out on that guy. So, I mean.
If you look at Mario Williams' style compared to those two, he's much bigger, he's much stronger. I just think he's going to have it. And if he falls to Tennessee's going to realize that he's a man, and he's going to run that offensive line down and get to the quarterback.
Okay, so you think Leonard Williams is the best player in this draft?
Yes, if I was a GM, I would pick him first.
Okay, I could see Leonard Williams going there, but I think that Tampa Bay or Tennessee would have to trade out of that pick, and I don't think it's one of those two teams that's taking Leonard Williams. Deacon, I'll ask you the same question. If you were the draft, if you were Tampa Bay today, who's your pick?
James. Yeah. They need a quarterback. You gotta. I think I just think he's the safest pick. I love Robert Williams, but Jameis. I think you go Jameis, and I believe Lovey saying that he doesn't have a problem putting Jameis as the face of the franchise, because I believe if you go Jameis, you have to go all in. The franchise has to be on board from today, and everything you do has to build around bringing in a young Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if I'm Lovey at this point, I'm taking the Florida State quarterback, and I'm making him the face of my franchise, and I'm not looking back. And that's the guy I'm gonna ride with. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next 2 months.
If I could say one more thing.
Go ahead.
You look at Jameis and you look at Johnny Manziel. One of the things about Johnny is Texas A&M has that policy that the media can't talk to freshman football players. And I think that allowed us as fans, people in the media, to fall in love with the Johnny we saw on the field. And he was fun to watch. And then the sophomore year, for access to him, we started to see some of the character flaws. And I just think since Jameis has been there's been more access to Jameis for a longer period of time. There's been a longer period of time to fall out of love with Jameis to some people. And I just think that you kind of have to look past that, look at what he does on the field, and hope that you can help him mature as a man and the character issues go away.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you brought up. I mean, exposure, obviously, starts to become how you define the character of a guy based on, what we see. And obviously, like you said, with the media and the court of moral and public opinion, it doesn't take much to love a guy or hate a guy. So I think that's a good point, Deacon. I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, I have a soft spot in my heart for Jameis Winston, and I hope he succeeds. And growing up in the Tampa Bay area, I hope he succeeds in Tampa Bay. So that'll be really fun. And a guy I thought who was going to be joining him, as we mentioned in the last podcast here on the Sport Buffet. You can check out the podcast on www.thesportbuffet.com. Once again, that's www.thesportbuffet.com. Check out the podcast where we talked about this next guy I'm going to introduce to the panel, and that's Larry Fitzgerald. The man got paid, ladies and gentlemen. He restructured his contract. He's taking a little bit less money, but let's just say he's still not eating bargain basement food. So Larry Fitzgerald, star wide receiver for the Cardinals, has basically signed what we would assume to be his last contract, and he's essentially going to be making $22 million over 2 years. Cap hit's going to be a lot lighter, and they're going to use that to be able to sign guys and keep the Cardinals competitive. A classy guy always is Larry Fitzgerald, and I'm really shocked that he's still in Arizona. And maybe you guys can elaborate to me as to why I shouldn't be shocked. But I really thought that this guy was going to chase a title, or to be a mentor, or to go get paid. And it kind of seems like he really did none of those things. I mean, yes, chasing a title is the ultimate goal in Arizona, but they're going to need some more pieces. But John, I'll start with you. Basically, we have a 2-year contract with the only team that Larry's played for. But what does that say about Fitzgerald as far as not wanting to jump to a contender, or not wanting to hold his ground and get the most money that he deserves? I understand his stats have declined, but I mean, he's still the top flight receiver in the league, in my opinion. John, what say you?
I say that Larry Fitzgerald's a rare breed in today's NFL, and that is a breath of fresh air. He's such a classy guy, on the field, off the field, whatever. And in today's league, with this fantasy football boom that we're having, I know Larry Fitzgerald was a good part of it, but people tend to forget what Larry Fitzgerald did in his career with Megatron and Julio Jones out there taking care of business today. This just tells me that he wanted to spend his whole career with one team, and it looks like he's going to be able to do that now. I'm just happy to see it. Money's not the most important thing to this guy. He's made plenty of it over his career. And you say chasing championships and Arizona might need a couple more pieces. I disagree with that. They are right there. They were so ravaged with injuries over this past year, especially the quarterback position. They made it to the playoffs for more than half the season with the guys like Ryan Lindley playing quarterback for them.
Well, sure, I think that their offensive line needs help. I think they need a more sturdy running back than Andre Ellington, or at least a complement to that guy. Their linebackers are a little bit suspect. Their defensive line and their secondary are amazing. There's potential they could lose Antonio Cromartie, but I think that the money that he's helped them save is amazing. I mean, that can be used to build those exact need areas.
Right. And going back to Larry Fitzgerald being a class act and unselfish, this is usually a move that you see, franchise quarterbacks like Tom Brady make to clear cap space and restructure their contract. So I just applaud Larry Fitzgerald. He's going to try to, I think he's never won a Super Bowl in Arizona. They made it to 1 and lost. I think he definitely wants to bring a Super Bowl to the people of Arizona. And, I think he loves playing for Bruce Arians. And how do you not? The guy's a tremendous head coach. He's a 2-time coach of the year.
Deke, what are your thoughts on Fitz's restructuring?
It's interesting. I kind of have some interesting perspective on this. I live in Huntington, West Virginia, which is the home of Marshall University, and Larry's younger brother Marcus played here for 4 years. And at the time, I was running, growing up, my father's in television over here, and he directed the Jumbotron when they finally got out of Marshall Stadium, and I started from the ground up doing various things there, but I had access to press credentials. And Marcus Fitzgerald and Larry Fitzgerald's father, Larry Sr., who worked for the Minneapolis Star, would come to Huntington for the home games. I had an opportunity to meet him. He is an amazing human being. Wonderful man, but they're a wonderful family. It surprises me absolutely zero that Larry Fitzgerald is that type of person, given the man that his father and even his younger brother are. Chris Carter is one of his idols, who was incredibly loyal to the Vikings franchise, who is incredibly loyal to Buddy Ryan, who actually cut him in Philadelphia. So I do believe that he is the rare type to be loyal to their franchise and play their whole career out there. And Super Bowl or not, let's give it our best effort. I think Arizona's close. I think Arizona's. Let's see what happens to them in free agency and who they can bring back. But Carson Palmer's not their long-term answer at quarterback. He's now blowing me out again, so you don't know what you're going to get with him. Your backup situation is such a mess. You drafted Logan Thomas. He was your third-string guy until it was time for him to actually play him, and he wasn't. If you don't replace Andre Ellington, you have to bring somebody in to complement him. Your wide receivers are between Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd and John Brown. They're fine. Their defense is unbelievable. If you lose Antonio Cromartie, you do have Tyrann Mathieu, who played corner in college, and while he's a great safety,
Wouldn't that be something with
maybe
Peterson and Matthew, sharing the cornerback duties? That would be a sight to watch. Go ahead.
Well, Patrick Peterson's the reason Tyrann Mathieu's in Arizona. Bruce Arians said in an interview with, I believe, ESPN, the reason we drafted Tyrann Mathieu is because Patrick Peterson literally jumped up on the table and screamed at us to take him. Literally jumped onto the table for that guy. So,
Gentlemen, let me ask you this, gentlemen. I hate to cut you off, but I'm curious because I'm reading a little bit more into it, and I'll let you get back. Is this the last contract that Larry's going to sign? I mean, it's a 2-year deal, but he's not that old. I mean, I think he's 31, which is old in football years, but I mean, he's not that old. I mean, he could potentially, if he keeps himself in shape. I mean, we talk about guys like T.O. Randy Moss stuck around the league in their late 30s. I mean, 2-year deal puts him at 33. Have we seen the last of Larry Fitzgerald after 20? What is that, 17? Or are we just kind of a quick contract just to kind of give us the money we need in Arizona?
Okay. Yeah, like you said, he's 31 years old. I think he'll be 32 by the time the season starts, I read somewhere. So he signed a 2-year deal. It'll be 30, by the time he's ready for a next contract, he'll be 35. And, the next 2 years are obviously going to speak volumes to whether Larry's going to sign another contract, because at the end of it, he's going to be 35. And if he's still putting out numbers like T.O. was putting out at 35, yeah, I absolutely think he's going to be able to play still if he wants to. But if not, then, it's probably going to be a tough tread to get work. Maybe he'll land like a veteran minimum contract for a guy like Bill Belichick, who loves taking in the old veteran guys. But we'll see. I'm definitely rooting for Larry Fitzgerald over the next 2 years, man. This guy's a warrior. I definitely want to see him succeed.
Deke, what are your thoughts on his potential for it being his last contract?
I agree with John. He'll be 35. I don't think he's that guy that wants to hang around until he's 38. If in 2 years they're really, really, really close, he might sign a 1-year deal. I think he'll have other interests in life, and football is a violent game, and we know more now than we used to. So would I be surprised if it's his last contract? No. Do I think it's his last contract? No, also. Because I think they're going to be in contention for the next couple of years, and you might squeeze 1 or 2 of those 1-year deals out of it on the back end. He's not leaving Arizona. He'll retire at Cardinal.
That's good to hear, especially in the day and age of free agency. I mean, like you said, both of you guys brought up great points about Arizona being on the cusp. I mean, obviously they're in a tough division, in a tough conference with, a lot of the teams, even in their own backyard. I mean, St. Louis is formidable. We all know about with Seattle. Can Seattle retain that dominance? We'll see. But the Cardinals and Bruce Arians are doing some things down there, and you look at their roster. They, like you said, they need a few upgrades, a couple of pieces, a couple of compliments. The real key to those guys, and a real key to Fitzgerald's success, and we're talking about his legacy, is Carson Palmer's knee. And if we look at Carson Palmer in 2015, obviously he just signed that massive deal before he tweaked the knee. I mean, is he on a short leash with Bruce Arians, especially now? I mean, obviously Bruce Arians isn't going to base all of his decisions on Larry Fitzgerald's legacy, but with what Larry Fitzgerald's done for this team, I mean, is Bruce Arians going to be more of a sense of urgency, for lack of a better word, to get this city a title and potentially get Larry Fitzgerald the legacy capper that he needs on his resume? John, what do you think?
To answer the question whether Carson Palmer is going to be on a short leash with Bruce Arians, I don't think so. I think Bruce is very loyal, and he likes to stick with the old dog, especially at the quarterback position. I don't, and especially considering who's behind Carson Palmer on the depth chart and who might be behind him. Who knows if they're going to go out and sign one of the veteran free agents, or they're going to draft a kid in the second or third round to play quarterback. That might change my answer, but as of right now, today, the way the roster is constructed, no, I think Carson Palmer has carte blanche. Even if he goes out there and throws 2 interceptions for every touchdown, I don't think he's going to be on a short leash at all, especially if they're winning football games like they've been doing for the past couple of years.
I don't think Carson Palmer will be on a short leash for the exact same reasons. I mean, if you look at the quarterback free agent market, the top guy on the market is Brian Hoyer, and then you look down the list, some you see Mark Sanchez, you see a couple guys who could be a band-aid, but you don't see a starter outside of maybe Hoyer and Sanchez. You don't see that guy. So even if you sign a veteran free agent, if you want to, what you have to do in Arizona is ride Carson Palmer as long as you can and draft a guy. I think they draft a quarterback late this year, and Arians develops him, because Ben Roethlisberger was his project, and Ben Roethlisberger pre-Bruce Arians was one guy, and post-Bruce Arians is a completely different guy.
Yeah, I mean, we could possibly see a guy like Bryce Petty go into the 3rd or 4th round, and I think Bruce Arians, that would be a good project. I mean, a tall kid with a good arm who's come from a good system of gunslinging the football. I think you're right. I mean, I think there's a potential to get a guy. I mean, maybe Logan Thomas is that guy. He's got a strong arm as well. I never really liked Logan coming out of college, but I mean, I posed that question really more so to see if Carson can't go week 1, I mean, do we really want to go with the Drew Stanton, Ryan Lindley experience debacle? Put the synonym in there, the euphemism for disaster, anyone you want to use that they experienced the last 5-6 weeks of the season into the playoffs. I really think they got to be prepared for life without Carson in the first round or in the first week of the season, and that's why I was wondering if maybe a quarterback. I mean, Brian Hoyer is an interesting thing. I don't think he'll go there because he doesn't have the intention of being the starter the whole year. I think that's a given for anybody who goes there. But, I mean, a guy like Mark Sanchez could be a possibility. Do you, like you said, like a guy like Bryce Petty, could you see him going there and developing and potentially being the starter week 1 with no strings attached, saying, look, do your best, see what happens? Or do you think that the Ryan Lindley experiment will continue if Carson's not ready week 1? Deacon, what do you thought?
Well, given everything you said, I actually have a couple thoughts. I think that as far as who's on the roster now, you look at Logan Thomas and the type of coach that Bruce Arians is and the background that he has for what took place to get from Drew Stanton to Ryan Lindley instead of Logan Thomas, who was 3 on the depth chart up into that point of the year. I think that speaks volumes about what they think about Logan Thomas. I believe that I think I talked about Brett Hundley earlier having an end ceiling. I think that Brett Hundley would be a really good fit. Bruce Arians, and maybe you get 2 years out of Carson Palmer, and then you have Hundley, who hopefully has been coached up to grasp this offense and can just go out there, and he's got a huge arm and let his athleticism shine.
I mean, isn't Hundley exactly like Logan Thomas, though?
No.
I mean, the build, the nature of his quarterback play. I mean, they kind of strike me as two similar bodies.
They have similar bodies with different skill sets. Logan Thomas was not as mobile as Brett Hundley is. Brett Hundley is not a runner by nature. He doesn't like to. He's not going to go out there and run for 150. But if you blitz him and you force him outside of the pocket, he can do some damage to you with his feet. He's I don't know, the best NFL equivalent I could think as far as his running. Donovan McNabb. Hundley's a little faster, but the way McNabb used his feet kind of in the middle of his career, where they were a weapon, but they weren't his primary or his secondary weapon.
Okay.
I think Hundley's more in that mold than Logan Thomas is a big pocket passer. That's what he is. Logan Thomas is more like Ben Roethlisberger.
All right, I can see that. But he doesn't have the talent as Ben Roethlisberger did coming out of college. I think that was evident. I mean, I don't think that Logan Thomas was thrown into the flames unprepared. I mean, I think that once Carson Palmer went down, all three of those guys, Stanton, Lindley, and Thomas, were preparing every single week as if they were going to be the starter. And Lindley really didn't come on until later on in the year. So I think that Logan Thomas had to prepare every week. I mean, he went in, he played against the Denver Broncos in week 4. You know that when, I believe it was week 4, it might have been week 5. You had to know that every week, you were preparing that you could potentially be the starter. So it wasn't like he was ill-prepared or shocked that he was going into games. It just, he didn't really translate on the field. And you think Bruce is ready to give up on him after 1 year?
I'm worried that it was more of a he didn't grasp the offense. And then you wonder, after that amount of time, did you try? You wonder where, I think that's how devoted is he to it? I think that's the more question that they have out in Arizona. And I think that is that's never anything you want a coach to ask at any level, how devoted is he? Well, if you question it, then you're not very devoted.
Well, this is the Sport Buffet on the Sport Buffet Radio Network. We are brought to you by our good friends at Rank Sports. Check out the new site, Rank Sports, for all your handicapping needs. Rank Sports, RankSports.com. Give them a check out over there. Get some picks, crush your bookies, and let's make a little money together. John.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you this, and I'm afraid of the response I'm going to get. But
okay, well, that makes me afraid of the question a little bit.
There's new Deflategate shenanigans. I mean, we're 18 days out of the Super Bowl, and we're still talking about Deflategate. And let's just summarize the story. There was an unapproved kicking ball that the Gillette Stadium officials, locker room attendant, attempted to introduce into the AFC. Basically, this locker room attendant saying he was handed this ball by an NFL employee, and this came from Adam Schefter, and I read it on the internet, so it has to be true, right? What are your initial thoughts on the fact that we're still talking about Deflategate 17 days later? And just go easy on me.
Oh man, okay. Yeah, I kind of read the same thing, and I guess it was 2 NFL officials involved, and I read that one of them has since been shit-canned from his job at the NFL. Yeah, I didn't read for whatever reason that was.
Well, the reason that he's been fired, I understand, is that balls from these games are actually auctioned off to different charities for money for the charities, and from what I understand, he's been actually giving those charities fake balls and keeping the real balls for his own for-profit. So, if my sources are correct, that's why he was fired. So it doesn't. If those accusations and allegations turn out to be true, you start to get the ball rolling on. I can see this guy introducing a ball that could be necessarily not up to code in an attempt to create controversy. If he was being investigated earlier on for his wings, I could see him trying to deflect another scandal off to maybe take him away, but clearly it didn't work. But John, I'll let you continue.
I'd never heard that, and that is astonishing and kind of sickening to me. So, whatever. It sounds like the guy deserved to lose his job. But the point is that over the next couple of weeks, it's not going to go away because there's an ongoing investigation, and information and things that are found out they're going to be leaked to the media. There's no way around it. The NFL is just they're covered by so many angles. Somebody's going to get their hands on that information as it comes out. So over the next couple of weeks until are handed or whatever by Goodell, it's not going to go away. Sit back and enjoy the ride, Aaron. I know you love hearing about Deflategate.
Deacon, has this become such a mass witch hunt that even the fans who were once 2 weeks ago saying, "Oh, cheaters, hashtag this, hashtag deflate these, blah blah blah," everybody who was just finding the Patriots guilty in the Coral Mob. I mean, are they just tired of this witch hunt? I mean, I understand that this isn't over, but I mean, is it the point now that the court of public opinion has already deemed the Patriots guilty, but yet there's so many new mind-boggling accusations coming out that we're almost like, I don't know what to believe, and at this point, I don't care anymore.
I think that it is. Here's what it comes down to: the NFL is the most followed sport in America. It has huge money deals with 5 TV networks. And what else do you want to talk about? Free agency hasn't started. It's the combine week, but interview processes and on the field stuff doesn't start till tomorrow. And this is it keeps the Super Bowl champs. It keeps all that in the limelight. So, and that makes money. So, I think that it's much ado about nothing. Apparently, this guy was already being investigated as part of the Ted Wells thing, and they have all this video on him in the Ted Wells investigation of the original Deflategate. And, we're talking about a half of football in a game where LeGarrette Blount ran for 3 touchdowns, and the Patriots, who I'm not a fan of, won by more than 6.
Right, and that's the question.
Deflated footballs, whatever.
Yeah, deflated footballs, 45-7, whatever. I mean, I understand, and I'll look at it from a different hat. I'll take my Pats hat off for a second. And I understand that, if they are found guilty of these accusations, and you know what, I'll let the facts present themselves. So far, I haven't found any yet. But, if they are found guilty, I mean, I understand it's one of those situations. It's like, oh, well, even though they were cheating, they still won by 38 points. Well, you know what? If they won by 5 points, it's cheating. I get that. So, I mean, in the sense of that, if they are found guilty of it, but it just seems like the more and more this investigation plays out, the more and more the blame keeps coming off of the guys who everybody wanted to throw it on to begin with. Belichick, Brady, among other guys. Then it became the ball boy who went into a different room, which turned out to be the bathroom. And now we're talking about NFL officials I mean, imagine if this all comes out and the NFL is the one who ends up with egg on their face because they have to go do an investigation. And it turns out their investigation sparks an internal investigation on their own company for cheating. I mean, the NFL hasn't had a good year. And John, I know that, with Adrian Peterson, with Ray Rice, with this whole scandal surrounding their Super Bowl, which, I mean, for the first week of Super Bowl coverage, we didn't talk about a game. So NFL really afford at this point in time to have two guys in their own circle be caught cheating.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Good. Just wanted to make sure my audio was. The fellas had an atrocious year in terms of their reputation, and this seems like if they kind of barking up the wrong tree here, it sounds like it's going to be pretty bad for Roger Goodell, especially again because he's going to be the guy that takes all the heat as he usually is when the NFL faces a scandal, I guess, quote unquote. So, I mean, yeah, with all the stuff that the NFL's been through.
Yeah, with all the stuff the NFL's been through, they can't really, afford this scandal. I know what you're saying, John. I know you're having a little technical difficulties on your end, but no matter, we trudge on. I wanted to say before we move on, or with this story, and I'll talk to Deacon about something else in a second. I want MMA UFC writer for Rank Sports, our new lead writer, Sean Stevens. I wanted to say thank you for coming on the show and providing your input. And if you want to check him out, .com under the MMA UCF UFC. I keep saying UCF, man. It's on the brain right now. The MMA UFC tab. You can get some great insight from Sean and other MMA writers, and we're definitely excited to have him on the show and the site. And again, Sean, I know you're listening. We appreciate it. You're welcome back anytime. If you'd like to give us a call here in the last 30 minutes of this show, talk about anything we've talked about. We've discussed Deflategate. We've discussed what else have we discussed, boys? We've discussed Larry Fitzgerald. We've discussed some NFL draft talk. Hell, we talked basketball, but we spent an hour talking about it. And you know what? That's good because that's kind of the situation and that's the topics that are the hot button issues right now. So if anything we've said or anything that you want to get off your chest, you can give us a call. Our number here at the studio is 1-702-475-5946. And again, that's 1-702-475-5946. Or you can shoot us an email at sportbuffet@gmail.com, and we'll read your email live on the air. Deke, let's get back to this, and I'll pose the same question to you as I did to John. How can the NFL rebound if they're found guilty of two internal employees basically stealing from not only the NFL, stealing from charity for their own personal benefits? I may have lost Deacon. Let's John, I guess I'll give you a chance to finish your point. Can the NFL recover from this?
Yeah, I think the NFL. Is it sounding a little better now, Aaron?
Yeah, it sounds great. You sound silky smooth, okay. And your voice is so sultry.
I know that's how you like it. But, I think at this point right now, the NFL, and this is my opinion, obviously, but the NFL can literally sustain any hit to their reputation. People are not going to stop watching the NFL. It's kind of like a drug. I know, at least speaking for myself and a lot of people that I know, I'm not stopping watching the NFL. It's something I've been doing my entire life. And, regardless of what's going on surrounding it, it's part of my life and there's no way I'm going to give that up. So the NFL is not going anywhere.
All right, Deke, it looks like we got you back on the line, and I'll pose the question to you. Can the NFL really recover from the egg on their face, basically, if they're found guilty with these two internal employees basically stealing from charities? And potentially could have been the ones to put the balls on the field that were under the air pressure that's permitted by the NFL.
I think the NFL can recover from anything it wants to recover from. If there's anything in this country that's so bad, that's one of those things that's driven by the consumer, and people are going to keep consuming the product. They had a bad year, though, haven't they? Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, Greg Hardy, the current Greg Hardy witch hunt going on. They're going to exhaust all options to suspend him. This with the stealing of the footballs. At the end of the day, who gets disciplined at the NFL, and who does the disciplining when it comes to internally? Roger Goodell works for the 32 owners. He makes them a lot of money, and you look at the only thing that I think the NFL doesn't recover from is if somehow it comes out that the Patriots winning the Super Bowl was predetermined or rigged. I think if that happens, then we'll have a huge turnoff, and that's the only thing that they would have to worry about. And I know there's a lot of people who say that the NFL is rigged and Vegas runs the league and this and that. I don't believe it, but no. Yeah, simply put, yes, the NFL can recover from something like this. The question is the Patriots and what happens for them in the court of public opinion. I know what it's like to have your favorite team hated. So do Patriots.
Yeah, and if I can jump in here, I think the question might be directed at the wrong person here, Aaron. Will the Patriots be able to recover from this if it comes out that they were blatantly cheating and deflating the footballs or whatever they're being accused of doing? Can the Patriots overcome something like this after what they've been through over the past 10 years facing allegations?
Sure. I think that the Patriots can overcome this no problem, because at the end of the day, there's no sim titles. There's no problems. There's no gates in the minds of Patriots. You're going to be hated as a successful franchise, like Deacon said, no matter who you are. The Yankees are hated. I hate the Yankees every day, but damn it, they're successful. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a hated franchise by most people. The Dallas Cowboys and San Francisco 49ers the same. And they got 6, 5, and 5 titles respectively. Notre Dame football, the same way. They're a successful program, and they're hated on by a lot of other people who aren't their fans. The Patriots are new into this hatred era. I mean, obviously the Dolphins fans, the Jets fans have hated them, but now you've got, when I sit here in Vegas, watching the Super Bowl, and I got Seahawks fans coming up and talking a lot of smack to me. It's not just Super Bowl banner. It's the fact that I hate the Patriots. Blah, blah, blah. Why? You haven't had this long list. We haven't wronged you in any way. So I think the Patriots don't really need to recover. If they're found guilty, they'll get their draft picks taken away. They'll be fined. And we move on, and we rebuild, and we adapt to what Roger Goodell hands us as punishment. It took 10 years to get another Super Bowl championship, but it's not like we were totally irrelevant. We were in the playoffs every single year but one. We were in the Super Bowl 2 other times. We were in the AFC title game 3 other times. So, maybe I'm crazy, but the Patriots did a great job at recovering from Spygate. I think they'll be just fine if they Deflategate.
Fair enough. Aaron, thanks for rubbing all that success into my face. I appreciate that, Aaron. Sorry to cut you off, Deke. Go ahead.
No, you're good, Aaron. I was going to say, the thing about fandom is the fans of the team are going to be the fans of the team. I'm a Steelers fan, full disclosure, and I grew up a Steelers fan, and I breathe Pittsburgh sports. I'm 28 years old. I hear about Mike Renfro's catching the AFC Championship game. I hear about Jack Tatum touching the football in what was the Immaculate Reception, and how, due to the rules of the time, it shouldn't have happened. I've listened to Rocky Blair speak, who was on that team, and make a joke about the conversation that the referee had on the phone, ended with, "What stadium are you in?" To which the official on the field signaled touchdown. And I still hear about that to this day. Now, Steelers fans, and they're passionate, and they're annoying, and they're loud, and they're loyal, and I understand why people hate the Steelers. Patriot fans are the same way. They're not going to lose their fans over this, but it's going to make that hatred that comes at you more intense. It's amazing. Some people can throw some real venom about an NFL team, but it is what it is, and they're just snowballing themselves onto this track. And you have fans who will say, "Well, they won 4 titles, but they won the first 3 while they were spying on people, and they won the last one with the playing football. So blah blah blah. They're all asterisks." Whatever. You got them.
Well, let me ask you this, John, and as a Dolphins fan, let's look at it from a different perspective. You can talk about the asterisks, you can yell cheat all you want. That's fine. You can do it till you're blue in the face. But if you were the Dolphins and you were a fan and you knowingly thought my team's cheating, but I'm going to get a Super Bowl title out of it, do you look the other way as a fan?
Absolutely. Not only do I look the other way, I admit it after the fact that you won the Super Bowl. And of course, you'd absolutely give up a first-round pick for a Super Bowl championship. It's a no-brainer. And I'm like you. You said you grew up hating the Yankees your entire life, but you obviously respected the hell out of them too because of how successful they were. I'm the same way with the Patriots. Can't stand them, and I'll bash them till the day I die. But I definitely respect them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I mean, with the Yankees, it felt so. I mean, the absolute pit was 2003, but the absolute pit led to what was one of the most moments of me watching baseball in my entire life in 2004. I mean, after game 3, of course, but it's those things. You have these teams that they just seem to have your number, but it feels so right. I mean, I'm sure as Dolphins fans, you guys felt so great in week 1 when you beat us. I mean, our team was in such disarray at that point. And whatever, I'm not making excuses. We've been beaten by the Dolphins plenty of times. But, I mean, as Dolphins fans, do you feel that sense of beat my chest every time you win a regular season game against the Patriots? I mean, am I wrong?
Definitely, it is a little. It feels a little better than beating another team. And, I do want to put out there, I don't want you to forget, I'm going to pound this home as much as I can to you this offseason and all next year. Tom Brady's record at Sun Life Stadium is 6-7. So he hasn't had that much success. But yeah, absolutely. Beating the Patriots in the regular season, the last time they played in the postseason, I think was like back in 98 or 99 or something like that. So it's been definitely a while. But the Patriots win in the regular season is absolutely more sweeter than any others, except for 2008 when we beat the Jets in the season finale. That was in the playoffs. That was pretty pretty good. But generally speaking, yeah, the Patriots game is the sweetest one.
I'll tell you what, though, I understand that Tom Brady's record at Sun Life Stadium is. Would you say it was 6-7? He said it was.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all I know is that Tom Brady's record in late January, early February is 4-2, and that's the only record I'm worried about.
And that's the only record that matters. So I guess you win this argument.
Drops the mic. Anyways, let's.
Okay, Bradshaw was 4-0.
That's true, and Joe Montana was 4-0, and I'm a Terry Bradshaw apologist. I give Terry Bradshaw a lot more credit than he may deserve, but that's for a whole new can of worms. We've talked about some NFL. We've talked about the NBA. We've talked about college football. We've even talked about what else did we talk about? Some of the players in the NFL, specifically down to the players, Larry Fitz. Let's talk about, and we talk about Yankees. We've among other teams he played for, but it's time to say farewell to Jason Giambi, and everybody kind of has a different viewpoint of Jason depending on who you root for, what your philosophy is on steroids, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd like to get your all's initial thoughts on your opinions on Jason Giambi before I give mine. So, if you could start with you, just give me your thoughts on me as a baseball player from the whole perspective.
I think Jason Giambi was a good major league ball player. I have a weird stance on steroids. I feel like they were more rampant in the majors than anyone will ever admit. I believe that the Hall of Fame should not be steroid labeled players. Yeah, I don't at all. I personally believe Barry Bonds is if not the best baseball player that's ever walked the face of the earth. He's in the argument. But as far as Giambi goes, Giambi was he was a good ball player who had a strong stretch in the middle of his career, and he hung on way too long. I remember 4 years ago when he was in Pittsburgh for half the season, I thought to myself, what? Jason Giambi? Isn't he old? But, he got himself over to the AL and would play until, would sit in DH, and he did that until people stopped paying him. Can you be mad at a guy for chasing a check? But
let me interrupt you here, Deacon, for a second, because we actually have a call into the Sport Buffet, and looks like the area code is an Orlando one. So, caller, what's your name? Where are you from?
This is Shane.
Hey, Shane. How's it going, Shane? Where are you from?
Orlando, Florida.
Orlando, Florida. Hey, Shane, thanks for calling the Sport Buffet, bud. What's on your mind?
I was just calling up a Deflategate talk as a Dolphin fan. I heard the one Dolphin fan just are on here, so I figured I'd chime in.
Johnny, looks like you got a fan club. Well, Shane, what was on your mind about Deflategate? And be careful, choose your words wisely. They may be.
Shane, don't let this dude intimidate you. Go and speak your mind. Yeah, you're a Dolphins fan. You're absolutely welcome.
Well, my thing is, I understand the squirrely didn't matter too much with cheating along the lines of the principle of the whole thing, which I think upsets a lot of people, and the integrity of the game.
Okay, I can understand that, but to say that should be tarnished because of a game that happened in the AFC title that may or may not have an effect on that actual contest. We know that the balls were definitely a lot more scrutinized in the Super Bowl. So, the Patriots won that game by all accounts fair and square. Why would anyone still put an asterisk on something that didn't happen in the actual event that caused the Patriots to win and capture the?
No, I don't think it had anything to do with the I think it's the integrity of the game, and they'll do anything it takes to win. That's my whole grief with how they play the sport.
All right, Shane, let me ask you
this. They won, so it is what it is.
Well, Shane, let me ask you this, and I'll try to pick your brain here a little bit. If you're, let's say I'm assuming you're a Dolphins fan because you said that, and you sent us regarding Dolphins. I remember earlier. I appreciate the email, by the way. If you have 2 or 3 guys on your team, your Super Bowl winning team that for steroids or PEDs and get 4-game suspensions, why would you put an asterisk on your title? If you had guys who were,
I guess
go ahead.
So I guess you're referring to Deion Jordan. Would be one of them.
I'm not really referring to anybody in particular. The guys that come out. There's a lot of guys. Brandon Browner. The reason I say this is because Brandon Browner was an Adderall guy who was on the Seahawks, and now he's over on the Patriots. I'm talking about guys who were suspended. Brandon Browner was a part of the Seahawks team that won the title, and he was suspended for 4 games, for performance-enhancing drugs, which Adderall may or may not be. That's a debate for another day. But that's what I'm saying, guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Teams who have won titles with guys who test positive for performance-enhancing drugs. Nobody sits here and asks about, asterisking their titles, or Bryce, who has now admitted to stick them. Are we going to put asterisks on their titles? I feel like those are a lot more of a situation where you can actually physically enhance the game from a much greater level than just talking about maybe taking a little bit of air out of a football. I mean, call me crazy, call me a homer. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, a lot of the guys are doing it, especially the UFC guys, which is starting to really come into the light. And that's just crazy in its own right. But, yeah, I mean, I know everyone's trying to get the biggest advantage because they're all great athletes and they're all playing for great teams, so on, so on. But it's just that they've just been caught twice now between that and the Spygate, and it's just real shady the way things gone down. And not just because I'm a Patriot hater, but it could be any team. I just don't care for it.
Sure, understand, and I can respect that. Like I said, you try to wear the hat and see the opportunity, have the opportunity to see what it's like from the other side. And we appreciate you calling in, Shane. What are your thoughts? I'm going to leave you before I'll leave you with the floor before we move on. Jason Giambi, I don't know if you're a baseball guy. I mean, in your opinion,
yeah, definitely.
Was he a Hall of Famer?
I mean, besides the epic stash that he's been able to grow, great swing. He was a third home run guy for years. Swinging from pretty sure the left side of the plate, if I'm not wrong. So he was able to hit that short porch in New York, which always helps. I'm a Marlins fan, so goes with the Dolphins. Not really a fan of his, but he's been a great hitter, and one of the best pure swings you'll see in a long time.
Right on. Shane, we appreciate you calling the show. You're welcome to call back in. And thanks for coming aboard the Sport Buffet.
All right, man. It was nice talking to you guys.
All right, bud. Take care. All right, well, we've got Shane in Orlando listening to the show. If you want to be involved in the last 8 minutes of the show, give us a call. Once again, that number is 702-475-5946. Again, 702-475-5WIN, or hit us up at gmail.com. We are brought to you by Rank Sports. Rank Sports, your number one source for handicapping needs. Check them out at ranksports.com. Got my lead writers in football here, Michael Deacon and John Sirocco, as we wrap up the show here. Let's get back into that Jason Giambi talk. And, I liked what Shane said about his ability to grow a sweet stash. I didn't even think about that, but that's pretty hilarious. Deke, are you able to grow a sweet stash?
No, mine takes way too long to come in, and then it's red, which I actually love about it because us redheads, we're a rare breed.
John, I've seen some interesting stashes in your day when we worked together. Are you still able to rock a sweet stash?
Oh yeah, I can always bust out a good mustache when needed.
That's awesome, guys. Let's talk here quickly. We've got a couple minutes left in the show. Give me a yes or no and a little description as to why. John, I'll start with you. Is Jason Giambi a Hall of Famer? And before you answer that, few stats that may or may not persuade you. He's one of 20 players in MLB history with 400 homers, 1,400 RBIs, 1,200 runs, and 1,300 walks. I understand that his batting average isn't one of the tops in the Major League history, but he was a 5-time All-Star, and he was a career .277 hitter, 400 on-base percentage, .516 slugging percentage. So with the stats I've given you and your personal opinion of the player, John, is Jason Giambi a Hall of Famer or no?
He's a curious situation, I think. Obviously, I personally am of the belief that if you've been, associated with steroids, you should not be in the Hall of Fame. So with that being said, I'm going to say, but Jason Giambi kind of had two careers. He got very sick for a little while, if you recall, after he stopped taking steroids, and his life was in a little bit of question, if I recall correctly. And then he was able to come out and it kind of had a second career, a very good one. And for me personally, it's just etched in my memory. John Sterling, every time Giambi hit a home run, just hearing him saying the great Giambino. So I mean, I love the guy as a player, and I love how he was able to come and reestablish himself. But ultimately, no, in my opinion, he does not belong in the Hall of Fame.
Deke, what are your thoughts?
Even though we share different stances on steroids in the Hall of Fame, I agree with John in this case about Giambi. For the longest time, 500 was the magical mark with home runs. Kind of inflated a bit with steroids, and I think as we go farther from those days, that magic will come back to the 500 number. But he just, I guess my overall opinion of Jason Giambi overrides everything. I think he was a really good ball player. He was a great player for a stretch of his career, and but he wasn't. You can tell the history of baseball and leave Jason Giambi out, and I think that's what makes you a Hall of Famer. When you tell the history of the game, if you can't leave that person's name out of that, they are a Hall of Famer.
Interesting take. I have never heard it described from that point of view. I think that's a very good way to put it. His contributions to the game of baseball. That's a nice touch, Deke. I appreciate that, guys. That's kind of all the time we have. I'm very appreciative to all the callers, all the emails. Once again, my Rank Sports lead writers here. We had Sean Stevens, the UFC lead writer. We had Michael Deacon, one of our NFL lead writers, and John Serrano, writer. You guys can check out their work on ranksports.com. Once again, that's ranksports.com, RAC sports.com. You can check out the Sport Buffet's webpage at www.thesportbuffet.com. www.the are also broadcast on the Aristocrat Sports Network. John Rocco, our good friend, CEO of Aristocrat Sports Network, Aristocrat's also airing on the website as well. Gentlemen, I appreciate the knowledge. I appreciate the insight, guys. It's been a fun 2 hours. John, always a pleasure. We've done shows together.
Absolutely. I always have the best time in the world, man, coming on with you, Aaron. And I love you. You filled in on my show a couple times, and it's like, we could talk for hours, that. And I just want the listeners, and readers of Rank Sports. There's going to be an article coming out by me here in the next day or two, talking about the Gennady Golovkin fight coming up Saturday. So be on the lookout for that if you're into boxing at all. It'll be a decent read, hopefully. So, Aaron, it was my pleasure. Thank you very much, my man.
Hey, John, like I said, always anything you want to tell your loyal readers and the loyal listeners of Sport Buffet, what you got coming out on the website in a couple of days?
For those of you out there who follow Rank Sports and get your handicapping picks from there, about the page, I'll have my first article, I believe, will be on NFL free agency, what's going down, what the early stages of that are looking like. I should have it up sometime this season. And then I was playing with the idea, and I'll throw it out there, get a yay or nay from the two of you, of maybe comparing the 30 MLB teams to its equivalent in the NFL and seeing kind of where that takes me. Just kind of have fun with a piece like that.
That's definitely. I think that would be an interesting read, and I'm thinking you should take that and run. And I think myself and the readers will be looking forward to catching a glimpse of that as they visit Rank Sports and read about the NFL. Because the NFL, like you said, there's no off season, even though they claim there is one. It's a 24/7 league. Yeah, anything on the NFL is definitely interesting, and if you can tie that with MLB, you're pulling on my heartstrings.
So it'll be fun. And John, it was nice to be on with you. And hopefully we can do this again.
I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that free agency article. I kind of want to see your opinion on what the Dolphins are going to be doing.
I gotta. That one's going to be so far I've related the Cardinals and I've related the St. Louis Cardinals and San Francisco. That's kind of where I'm at so far.
Well, the beauty about the off
We're the Yankees of the NFL. That's where we're going to have to get to.
Well, gentlemen, we are unfortunately out of time. Thank you all for tuning in to the Sport Buffet. Once again, check us out on the website, thesportbuffet.com. Matt West will be back along next week. We wish him well. And thank you to Michael Deacon. Thank you to John Sirocco. Thank you to Sean Stevens, everybody that called in and emailed the show and were a part. We appreciate it. Thank you all very much. Once again, for the Sport Buffet, from Matt West, I am the Iceman, Aaron Crouch, and have a great evening.